January 15th, 2024, USS Gerald R. Ford, 240 nautical miles east of Virginia Beach. 5,300 people are living inside a single building that never stops moving, never goes quiet, and operates under conditions that would be considered emergency housing anywhere else on Earth. The nuclear-powered aircraft carrier represents the ultimate fusion of a military airbase, an industrial complex, and a floating city. We'll explore how 18,000 meals get prepared daily in galleys that never shut down, why fresh water becomes a precious commodity despite being surrounded by ocean, and what happens to sleep when your bedroom sits directly beneath the loudest workplace in the world. This is the hidden logistics of American naval power, where the price of projecting strength across every ocean is measured in fuel and steel, with privacy and personal space as the most valuable. USS Gerald R. Ford operates on flight operations time instead of the usual Eastern Standard Time or Greenwich Mean Time, which means there is no distinction between night and day aboard this vessel. At 0300 hours, while the rest of the world sleeps, the flight deck erupts in controlled chaos as aircraft launch for their missions. At 1500 hours, when most people are finishing lunch, another wave of sorties begins. The cycle never stops. This relentless operational tempo cascades through every system on the ship. The catapult crews work in rotating shifts to maintain the launch capability. The air traffic controllers monitor approaches and departures around the clock. The aircraft maintenance teams service multi-million-dollar fighters under floodlights that turn midnight into artificial noon. Every operation aboard revolves around the singular mission: keep aircraft flying. For the 5,300 people living inside this machine, the consequences are immediate and personal. Traditional life rhythms become impossible. There is no quiet evening meal, no weekend sleep-in, no natural transition from work to rest. Instead, there are watch rotations, shift changes, and the constant background noise of a workplace that produces 140 decibels when an FA-18 Super Hornet engages full afterburner. The ship's public address system, known as the 1MC, reinforces this artificial time structure. Flight quarters. All personnel not engaged in flight operations clear the flight deck. These announcements echo through every compartment at all hours. The human body's circadian rhythm, which evolved over millions of years to follow the sun, must now follow the demands of jet fuel and ordnance. The galley aboard a carrier operates at a scale that defies easy comparison. Each day, culinary specialists prepare over 18,000 meals using industrial equipment that could serve a small city. The main galley houses rotary ovens capable of cooking 600 pounds of prime rib simultaneously. Steam-jacketed kettles large enough for a person to stand inside prepare soups and stews by the hundreds of gallons. Deep fat fryers the size of small cars maintain precise temperatures for French fries and fried chicken consumed by the ton. 90 to 100 culinary specialists work in rotating shifts that stretch 12 to 18 hours. The heat from the massive ovens combines with the humid air recycled through the ship's ventilation system create working conditions that regularly exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The noise from industrial mixers, ventilation fans, and shouted orders creates a constant roar, forcing communication through gestures and abbreviated commands. The process begins in storage compartments deep within the ship's hull. A typical 90-day patrol requires 1.2 million eggs, 800 tons of frozen foods, and 350,000 pounds of fresh fruits and vegetables. Moving these supplies from storage to the galley requires ship-wide coordination called a working party. Sailors from every department form human chains through narrow passageways and up steep ladders, passing cases of food hand to hand from the deepest storage areas to the preparation spaces. The prep work starts before the other crew members wake up. Bakers begin their shift before midnight, producing hundreds of loaves of bread and thousands of rolls from scratch. Other specialists prep vegetables, portion meat, and manage the timing required to have multiple food lines ready simultaneously. The coordination resembles a factory floor more than a traditional kitchen, with each person responsible for specific stations in an assembly line designed for volume and speed. The serving areas reflect the military hierarchy physically. The main mess decks accommodate the majority of enlisted personnel, such as sailors ranked E1 through E6. These spaces buzz with constant activity as lines of hungry sailors rapidly move as they grab trays and load them with whatever options are available. Conversations, brief and rational. Tables rarely get filled long enough for conversations as they get back to work as soon as they finish eating. The Chief's Mess serves Chief Petty Officers ranked E7 through E9 of the senior enlisted leadership. The atmosphere here is notably different, quieter, more deliberate, with longer conversations and a sense of respite from the urgency that defines the main mess decks. The food is often identical, but the environment acknowledges the experience and responsibility these sailors carry. Officers dine in wardrooms that provide yet another level of service and atmosphere. Multiple wardrooms accommodate different ranks, with the senior wardroom reserved for the ship's department heads and commanding officers. Here, culinary specialists often serve as stewards, providing more formal service and an environment where operational planning occurs alongside meals. Despite the hierarchy in dining spaces, certain meals unite the entire crew. Midrats or midnight rations serve as the main meal for night shift personnel. Served from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., midrats often feature comfort foods like hamburgers and breakfast items. For sailors coming off grueling night watches, this hot meal represents one of the day's few reliable comforts. Surrounded by trillions of gallons of seawater, the aircraft carrier faces the paradox of scarcity amid abundance. Every drop of fresh water aboard must be manufactured from the ocean itself using steam-powered distillation plants or reverse osmosis systems. These plants operate continuously, producing between 200,000 and 400,000 gallons of potable water daily, enough to supply a small town. The water serves multiple critical functions beyond human consumption. The galley requires thousands of gallons for cooking and cleaning. The ship's laundry facilities demand enormous volumes for washing uniforms and linens for thousands of people. Electronic systems throughout the ship need cooling water to prevent overheating. The steam catapults that launch aircraft consume water to generate the pressure required to accelerate a 30-ton fighter jet from 0 to 150 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. This massive demand makes water conservation a constant concern. The distillation and reverse osmosis plants require regular maintenance, and when one system goes offline, the ship's water supply can quickly become critical. When operational demands strain production capacity, the command implements water hours, specific times when water is available for showers and personal use. Outside these hours, water for hygiene is severely restricted. The production process itself represents a minor engineering marvel. Seawater enters through intake valves and passes through multiple filtration stages. In distillation plants, steam heated by the ship's nuclear reactor boils seawater, leaving salt and impurities behind, while pure water vapor condenses in collection tanks. Reverse osmosis systems force seawater through semi-permeable membranes under extreme pressure, filtering out salt molecules and contaminants. The quality control for this manufactured water exceeds many municipal standards. Each batch undergoes testing for salinity, pH levels, and bacterial contamination. Storage tanks throughout the ship maintain reserves, but these reserves represent only hours or days of consumption, not weeks. The ship's independence from land-based resources depends entirely on these systems functioning perfectly, creating a vulnerability hidden beneath the vessel's apparent self-sufficiency. Water hours affect every personal routine aboard. Sailors learn to time their hygiene around announced availability. They develop efficient personal systems for conservation, filling water bottles during available hours, using wet wipes for quick cleaning, and coordinating shower schedules with shipmates to minimize waste. What appears abundant becomes precious through the constraints of production and consumption on an industrial scale. The washrooms aboard an aircraft carrier, known as heads, eliminate the concept of privacy that defines hygiene ashore. Shower facilities consist of large, open bays with a dozen or more shower heads lining the walls. No stalls separate users. No curtains provide visual barriers. No locks ensure solitude. Dozens of people shower simultaneously in full view of each other, creating an intimacy enforced by architectural necessity rather than choice. The unwritten rules of shipboard shower etiquette develop quickly among new sailors. Shower shoes are mandatory. Thick-soled flip-flops or sandals that protect feet from the constantly wet floors shared by thousands of people daily. Without this protection, fungal infections spread rapidly through the communal spaces. The Navy shower represents efficiency born from resource constraints. Sailors learn to turn on the water just long enough to get wet, turn it off while soaping and shampooing, then turn it back on briefly to rinse. This technique, developed when older ships had more limited water production, persists as both practical conservation and cultural tradition. Even when water is abundant, the Navy shower remains standard practice, a behavioral adaptation that outlasts its original necessity. Timing determines the shower experience as much as technique. The heads become most crowded immediately before and after major shift changes, when hundreds of sailors simultaneously prepare for or recover from watch duty. Lines form for shower heads. Wait times extend. The social dynamics of shared nudity combine with the practical pressures of limited time and space. Those seeking a more private shower experience learn to avoid peak hours. Middle of the night timing, during mid-watch periods when most sailors are either on duty or sleeping, offers the closest approximation to solitude. But even at these off-peak hours, complete privacy remains elusive. Someone is always coming or going, using adjacent facilities, or maintaining the endless cleaning required to keep shared spaces functional. The toilet facilities present their own adaptation challenges. Instead of traditional gravity-fed systems, carriers use high-powered vacuum toilets that create a startling whoosh sound when flushed. The suction pulls waste into marine sanitation devices, where it undergoes treatment before discharge. Warning signs throughout the heads list items that cannot be flushed. Anything beyond human waste and toilet paper can clog the vacuum system for entire sections of the ship. Laundry facilities follow the same pattern of shared resources and extended wait times. Commercial-grade washers and dryers serve thousands of people, creating backlogs that stretch for hours. Sailors drop off mesh bags containing uniforms and linens, then wait for collection announcements over the ship's public address system. Missing items are common enough that many sailors resort to washing personal clothing in berthing compartment sinks, hanging socks and underwear on any available pipe or hook to dry. The berthing compartments house the majority of the crew in conditions that redefine the concept of personal space. Each enlisted berthing accommodates between 60 and 120 sailors in a single open bay. The dominant feature is the rack, stacked bunks arranged 3 high with barely enough clearance for a person to lie flat. The nickname coffin rack captures the claustrophobic reality. Each sleeping space measures approximately 78 inches long, 30 inches wide, and 18 inches high. Sleeping in these conditions requires physical and psychological adaptation. Most sailors cannot sit upright in their racks. Rolling over requires careful maneuvering to avoid hitting the low ceiling. Personal items must fit in the narrow space between the mattress and the rack above, or in the small coffin locker underneath each bunk. A sliding metal panel or fabric curtain provides the only barrier between the sleeper and the berthing bay. The sensory environment of the berthing compartment challenges every assumption about restful sleep. The ship's ventilation system creates a constant background hum. Conversations, snoring, and movement from dozens of other people fill the space with human noise. Announcements from the ship's public address system interrupt sleep at all hours, with updates on flight operations, weather conditions, and routine notifications. The most dramatic sounds come from above. Many berthing compartments sit directly below the flight deck, where aircraft operations create thunderous noise that penetrates the steel hull. The roar of jet engines during launch procedures registers over 140 decibels, loud enough to cause permanent hearing damage. The catapult system produces a distinctive thump-thump shriek as it fires, followed by the violent slam of arresting cables catching aircraft during landing operations. Sleeping through these sounds becomes a learned skill rather than natural rest. New sailors often struggle for weeks to achieve meaningful sleep, while experienced crew members develop the ability to remain unconscious through noise that would wake them instantly in civilian environments. The adaptation represents a form of sensory conditioning that fundamentally alters the relationship between consciousness and sound. The lighting in berthing compartments reflects the ship's 24-hour operational schedule. Traditional day and night lighting would disturb sailors sleeping at different hours, so compartments maintain a perpetual twilight using red darkened ship lights. This constant dim illumination helps accommodate rotating sleep schedules, but disrupts natural circadian rhythms that depend on light-dark cycles for proper rest. Movement adds another dimension to the sleep challenge. Even a 100,000-ton warship responds to ocean conditions. Calm seas produce a gentle, almost imperceptible rocking motion. Storm conditions create violent pitching and rolling that can throw sailors from their racks if they don't brace themselves properly. Learning to sleep through both the motion and the sounds of the ship working against rough seas requires months of adaptation. The berthing bay never empties and never quiets completely. The ship's rotating watch schedule ensures that at any given time, roughly 1/3 of the crew is on duty, 1/3 is involved in maintenance or training, and 1/3 is attempting to rest. This creates constant movement through the berthing areas as sailors come off watch, prepare for the next shift, or try to grab sleep between other duties. The courtesy of maintaining quiet becomes both essential and difficult in spaces shared by so many people on different schedules. The ship's living arrangements create a physical manifestation of military rank, where advancement brings measurable improvements in personal space and privacy. This hierarchy serves functional purposes beyond mere privilege. It provides incentives for career advancement while acknowledging the increased responsibilities that come with rank. Chief Petty Officers, the senior enlisted leaders ranked E7 through E9, live in dedicated chief's quarters that represent a significant improvement over enlisted berthing. These spaces typically house 6 to 8 people rather than over 100. Each person has more personal storage space and greater control over their immediate environment. The atmosphere is quieter and more conducive to rest, reflecting both the chief's seniority and their need to be mentally sharp for leadership responsibilities. Junior commissioned officers share staterooms, typically 2 to 4 people per room. These spaces include desks for administrative work, more generous personal storage, and often have attached or nearby heads that serve only a few officers rather than hundreds of enlisted sailors. The staterooms provide the first real approximation of privacy available aboard the ship, allowing officers to conduct sensitive conversations, complete paperwork, and rest without the constant presence of dozens of other people. Senior officers enjoy progressively more spacious quarters. Department heads and the executive officer have larger staterooms with separate sleeping and working areas. The commanding officer's quarters, known as the in-port cabin, include a bedroom, office space, and a private dining area where the captain can conduct official business and host visiting dignitaries. This hierarchy creates visible reminders of advancement opportunities throughout the ship. Enlisted sailors see the improved conditions available to chiefs and officers, providing tangible goals beyond increased pay and responsibility. The system acknowledges that leadership requires mental clarity and decision-making capability that may be compromised by the sleep deprivation and stress of communal living. The hierarchical living arrangements also serve practical command functions. Chiefs need private spaces to counsel subordinates and discuss personnel issues. Officers require areas for classified briefings and operational planning that cannot occur in open berthing bays. The captain's quarters serve as an extension of the command center, available for emergency meetings and secure communications at any hour. However, even the most privileged accommodations aboard remain constrained by the ship's fundamental nature. Officers' staterooms, while private, are still small by civilian standards. The captain's quarters, though spacious relative to enlisted berthing, occupy less space than a typical apartment bedroom. Every person aboard, regardless of rank, lives within the steel walls of a working warship where operational requirements take precedence over personal comfort. The contrast between living conditions creates both motivation and tension. Enlisted sailors working 16-hour days in extreme heat, while knowing that officers have private bedrooms and individual climate control, can breed resentment. The military culture works to channel this awareness into professional ambition rather than class conflict, emphasizing that improved conditions come with increased responsibility and accountability. Despite the industrial setting, sailors create rituals and relationships that restore normalcy and human connection aboard the carrier. These acts of adaptation are forms of psychological survival, preserving identity within a system built for mission over comfort. Midrats, the late-night meal, becomes a social ritual as much as nutrition. Friendships form across divisions over comfort food at midnight, bonding sailors amid the sounds of flight operations. Steel beach picnics offer rare escapes. When flight ops pause, the crew gathers on the deck for grilling, music, and sunlight. Brief, precious breaks that sailors anticipate for weeks. Personal spaces in berthing become individualized despite tight limits. Photos, small decorations, and organized racks reflect identity in an environment designed for uniformity. Mentorship grows from hierarchy and shared hardship. Veterans teach newcomers how to sleep through noise, manage showers, and find moments of privacy, building informal support networks. Communication rituals emerge around scarce internet and phones. Email feels precious. Video calls are major events, each a reminder of both connection and distance from home. Courtesy becomes vital in crowded spaces. Quiet during sleep, fair storage sharing, and respect for personal items keep communal living bearable. These adaptations coexist with unending operations. The carrier remains a war machine, yet within its steel, sailors carve out pockets of humanity. Their ability to balance personal needs with collective demands highlights resilience as vital as technical skill in sustaining naval power. 6 months later, as the carrier returns to port, sailors pack their coffin lockers and prepare for a world with privacy, silence, and uninterrupted sleep. The numbers tell part of the story. 18,000 meals, 400,000 gallons of water, 5,300 people in space, meant for half that ashore. The meaning lies in how thousands reshape daily life for a mission larger than comfort. The carrier works through technology, firepower, and a crew's sacrifice of privacy, quiet, and space. Every meal, shower, and hour of sleep becomes fuel for global presence. Stepping off, sailors carry the knowledge of living in one of the most demanding machines ever built, learning rest in chaos, community in crowds, and purpose in constraint. Their adaptation shows resilience and the hidden cost of power. When a carrier appears on the news, the real story lies below decks, where thousands trade normal life for humanity within steel.